The world had a soundtrack, and mine was the gentle, rhythmic one of the Blackwood Library. It was a symphony of quietude, the soft thud of a hardback closing, the whisper of a page turning, the faint squeak of my shoes on the polished oak floor. For 5 years, this had been my sanctuary, my kingdom of ordered silence. As Isla, the head librarian, I was a curator of chaos, transforming trolleys of returned books into perfectly aligned soldiers on shelves. I found solace in the predictability, in the way every story had its designated place. My own life, I feared, was a volume without a compelling plot, its pages yellowing with quiet routine. The change began on a Tuesday, a day indistinguishable from any other until it wasn't. I was reshelving the fiction section, my fingers tracing the familiar spines, when a sliver of cream-colored paper, thick and luxurious, caught my eye. It was peeking from within Patricia Highsmith's The Price of Salt. My first thought was irritation, a forgotten receipt perhaps damaging the pages. But when I slid it out, I found it was covered in a handwriting that was more art than script, a flowing, elegant cursive that seemed to dance with a life of its own. The words themselves were a quiet earthquake. I traced the spine of 1,000 tales. Yet the one I long to hold remains unread. A story of a quiet heart, behind a fortress wall apart. A flush, hot and entirely unbidden, spread from my chest up my neck, warming my cheeks. This was no simple note. It was an intrusion, a key sliding into a lock I didn't know I possessed. The air in the silent aisle suddenly felt charged, thick with a presence that was both thrilling and unnerving. My eyes scanned the rows of books, searching for a flicker of movement, a hint of a smirk, but found only the stoic, leather-bound faces of countless stories. I was alone, yet I had never felt so seen. I folded the paper carefully, its texture a secret promise against my fingertips, and slipped it into the pocket of my cardigan, where it seemed to pulse with a gentle, persistent heat for the rest of the day. The following week I found the second one. This time, it was nestled in a collection of Sappho's poetry, tucked beside a fragment about the sweet bitterness of love. My heart hammered against my ribs as I unfolded it, the paper seeming to hum with potential. The script was the same, but the tone was bolder, more direct. Do the shelves you stack so carefully ever tremble at a glance? Does the dust you wipe from forgotten prose settle on the chance of a single, shared glance? I watch the curve of your neck as you reach. A silent sonnet, a whispered speech. The breath left my lungs in a soft rush. The curve of your neck. She had been watching me. Not just seeing me but observing the specific, intimate details of my existence. The realization sent a shiver down that very curve of my neck, a sensation that was part alarm, part exquisite thrill. And I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, who it was. Eva. She was a Tuesday and Thursday afternoon regular. She would arrive just after 2, always carrying a worn leather satchel and a thermos of tea that smelled of bergamot and honey. She claimed the same worn armchair by the large, arched window that looked out onto the old oak trees. Her presence as constant and comforting as the afternoon light that streamed in. I had, of course, noticed her. How could I not? She had a face that invited daydreams. High cheekbones, a mouth that seemed perpetually on the verge of a smile, and eyes the color of rich, dark earth, capable of holding profound warmth or deep, intriguing shadows. Her hair, a cascade of chestnut curls, always had one rebellious strand that fell across her forehead, and I had developed a secret, helpless fascination with the way she would tuck it behind her ear. Now, the poems cast our entire previous, silent dynamic in a new, electrifying light. Every polite smile we'd exchanged at the checkout counter, every time our fingers had brushed as I handed her a stack of books, every moment I'd caught her gaze from across the room, they were no longer meaningless pleasantries. They were chapters in a story I was only just beginning to read. The library transformed. It was no longer just a place of work. It became a landscape of charged potential. The air grew thick with the scent of her jasmine perfume and the unspoken words that hung between us. I began to dress with a new consciousness, selecting blouses that skimmed my waist, touching a drop of sandalwood oil to the pulse points on my wrists, wondering if she would notice. I found myself performing small, deliberate acts for her unseen eyes, lingering a moment too long on a high shelf, knowing the position would accentuate the line of my body, letting my hair down so it fell around my shoulders, imagining her gaze tracing its path. The third poem was found in a book on astronomy, tucked into a chapter about the moon's gravitational pull. The moon pulls the tides of force unseen, as your gravity pulls the heart from me. What orbit this that I am in? Drawn to the light I cannot win. I dream of the heat your skin would hold. A story waiting to be told. The heat your skin would hold. The words ignited a corresponding heat low in my belly. A slow, smoldering fire that was entirely new to me. My dreams, once vague and forgettable, became vivid, sensory affairs. I would wake in the deep silence of the night, my skin tingling, the phantom sensation of fingertips ghosting along my jawline, my collarbone, the sensitive skin of my inner wrist. The cool, orderly world I had built for myself was being systematically, beautifully, undone by a stranger's pen. I started looking for clues in her choices. The books she checked out were about art, philosophy, and love poetry. Always love poetry. It was as if she was leaving me a trail of breadcrumbs, not just through her poems, but through her reading. I felt a desperate, aching need to respond, to let her know that her words were not falling on barren ground. One afternoon, when she was browsing, I deliberately placed a collection of Elizabeth Bishop's love letters on a trolley near her chair. Our eyes met as she picked it up, and the look she gave me was not one of casual thanks, but of deep, searing understanding. The air between us crackled, so palpable I was surprised the library lights didn't flicker. The culmination came on a Thursday evening I had deliberately orchestrated, volunteering for the late shift. The sun had long since set, and a full, luminous moon hung in the velvety black sky, its light pouring through the great windows to drench the library in an ethereal, silver-blue glow. The silence was profound, a living, breathing entity that seemed to press in on my ears. I was ostensibly checking the poetry section, but my entire body was a tightly coiled spring of anticipation. Every nerve ending was alive, hyper-aware. Then the sound I had been waiting for. The soft, protesting creak of the main door's ancient hinges. My breath caught. I retreated deeper into the shadows of the stacks, my back pressed against the cool wood, and watched. Ava moved through the moon-dappled aisles like a phantom, a creature of the night itself. Her footsteps were silent on the carpet. She went straight to the works of Emily Dickinson, her movements sure and purposeful. The moonlight caressed the line of her throat, the slope of her shoulders, the elegant length of her fingers. I watched, mesmerized, as those fingers, the ones I had imagined tracing the lines of my palm, skimming over my ribs, slipped a final, fateful piece of that beautiful cream paper between the pages of a collection. She paused for a moment, her head bowed as if in prayer, before turning and walking out, the door sighing shut behind her. The silence she left behind was heavier now, pregnant with revelation. I waited, counting the frantic, heavy beats of my own heart. 1, 2, 3. Then I moved. I walked to the Dickinson shelf on legs that felt like water. My hand trembled as I pulled out the book. The paper was there, warm, as if it had absorbed the heat from her hands, from her very soul. I unfolded it, my eyes devouring the words in the pale moonlight. The moon has seen the truth I hide. It paints the silence where I reside. It watches you and knows my shame. Crave the shadow, not the name. To dream of touch, of taste, of skin. Where this quiet war I fight begins. To imagine the weight of your hip beneath my hand. The yielding of your body like shifting sand. The gasp that would part your lips, so sweet. As trembling, eager bodies meet. So I'll write my want in midnight ink. And leave it here for you to think. That in this quiet, moonlit room, your presence banishes the gloom. And at the bottom, the definitive, looping initial. I. The poem was a confession, a blueprint of desire so raw and honest it stole the air from my lungs. The weight of your hip. The yielding of your body. It was no longer just about longing, it was about specific physical need. a need that echoed my own with a terrifying, exhilarating intensity. I didn't think. I was beyond thought. I was pure, unadulterated impulse. I pushed the heavy library door open and stepped out into the cool night air. Felt like stepping into a new world. She was there just a few feet away, her back to me as she fumbled in her satchel, her shoulders tense, her head bowed. Ava. The name was a whisper, but it shattered the night. She froze, her entire body going still. Slowly, as if in a dream, she turned. The moonlight caught the silver tracks of tears on her cheeks, but her eyes held no sorrow. They were dark pools of raw, unguarded hunger, blazing with a fire that threatened to consume me whole. Isla, she breathed, my name a sacred, desperate sound on her lips. You found it. I stepped closer, the gravel crunching softly under my feet. The space between us, once a safe, public distance, now felt like the most intimate of chambers. I could smell the jasmine on her skin, see the rapid flutter of the pulse at the base of her throat. You wrote of craving, I said, my voice low and husky, foreign even to my own ears. I held up the final poem, the paper trembling in my grasp. You wrote of dreaming of touch, of skin. I did, she whispered, her gaze dropping to my mouth, lingering there with a heat that was almost a physical touch. I do. That was all the confirmation I needed. I closed the final distance between us until my body was a mere breath from hers. I could feel the heat radiating from her, a furnace that promised to burn away all my reservations. I raised my hand slowly, giving her every opportunity to retreat to shatter the spell. I cupped her jaw, my thumb stroking the soft, damp skin of her cheek. Her skin was like heated silk. A sharp, shuddering gasp escaped her, a sound of pure, unadulterated relief, and her eyes fluttered closed for a brief, blissful second. Read it to me, I commanded, my voice a whisper that was both a plea and a demand. She took the paper from my hand, her fingers tangling with mine. The contact was electric, a jolt of pure sensation that shot straight up my arm and coiled deep in my core. She didn't look at the page. Her eyes locked with mine, dark and promising everything, as she began to speak. The moon has seen the truth I hide. Her voice was a low, intimate caress, each word a deliberate, sensual stroke against my soul. As she recited the lines of longing, her free hand came to rest on my waist, her touch burning through the thin fabric of my blouse. She pulled me closer until our bodies were aligned, until I could feel the frantic, galloping beat of her heart against my own, until the softness of her breasts pressed against me. The scent of her jasmine and night air and woman filled my senses, intoxicating. When the last desperate word, gloom, faded into the night, the poem was no longer just words on a page. It was a map of her desire, and I was ready to explore every uncharted inch of it. Her gaze was a question, dark and smoldering. My answer was the slight, eager part of my lips, the dilation of my own eyes, the way my body arched almost imperceptibly into hers. She didn't kiss me. Not then. She simply leaned forward until her lips were a hair's breadth from my ear. Her warm breath a ghost of a touch that made me tremble from head to toe. Let me show you, she whispered, her voice thick with promise, what the words mean. And as I let her lead me away from the library, her hand finding mine, her fingers lacing through my own with a possessiveness that felt like destiny, I knew the quiet, monochrome part of my life was over. The real story, the steamy, passionate, soul-searing one, was written not in ink, but in the language of moonlight, whispered secrets, and the overwhelming, breathtaking certainty of her touch. It was a story that was only just beginning, and I was ready, at last, to live every single word.